Okay, so here's the area that we sprayed with our non-selective herbicide after a couple weeks. You can see a pretty defined line there where it's died off. So the next thing we're going to want to do is all that dead material. We're going to want to cut this as short as we can, remove as much of that dead material as possible, and we'll show you what that looks like. All right, so we set our mower down to the lowest setting, which is about 1 inch, and just cut off as much of this dead grass and plant material as we could. This would be the point in the process where if you had any leveling, grading that you wanted done. Obviously, this is just the side of our shop here. We're not going to worry about leveling and grading, but if you did have some low areas or areas that drain poorly that you wanted to try to address with some grading, now's the time you'd want to bring in your topsoil and grade it out and level. So next step is going to be getting the verticutter and the aerator. Like I said, I'm going to do 2 different sides here so we can see the different results with the 2 different services. So that'll be the next step here. Okay guys, so time for the next part in my overseeding series. We've got my last video. I showed you how to get this all prepped. We've already sprayed our Roundup, killed the grass in the areas that we're going to reseed, and now we've cut it down as short as we could cut it to get as much of that dead grass out of there. And now we're going to take our Verticut machine here, and let me turn this on its side and I can explain to you. Oh boy. All right. So how this machine works is it's got all these blades here, and you can see they're short. They're just a couple inches long, and really only about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of this blade is going to cut down into the soil. But what it does is it cuts little slits in the soil for that grass seed to fall down into, because the grass seed really needs a good soil contact. You can't just throw grass on the surface and expect it to germinate. It needs to be sown down into the ground about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep. And that's how you get your really good germination. So I'm going to go ahead and verticut this area that we've prepped here, and I'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like after it's been verticut. Okay, so I've verticut the area and spread some seed. I'm going to show you here. You can see how there's little slits cut into the ground here. So all those little slits are where the grass seed is really going to germinate well. A lot of that stuff sitting on the surface, unfortunately, not going to germinate real well, but the stuff that gets down in these slits are going to germinate real well. They're about 1 inch apart. This is one of the things that we think sets our service apart. So a lot of companies will verticut once in one direction, spread the seed, and call it good. With our full service overseeding program, we have found that we get much better results. So I'll come back now and verticut this again 90 degrees. So the first one, I'm going up and down this way. I'm going to go 90 degrees to the original verticutting, and verticut it again. So right now we recommend about 10 pounds per 1,000 for bare ground like this of grass seed. So I've spread about 5 pounds per 1,000 square foot over this area. So I've put half my seed down. I've verticut in this direction up and down the hill, put half my seed down. Now I'm going to verticut across the hill and put the other half of the seed down. And we've found doing it this way gets us much better results. And one thing to be careful of if you're doing this yourself is there is a tendency to over apply the seed, because you want it to, everybody wants it to look lush and green as soon as it comes in. The thing is, if you apply too much seed, and I've actually done this myself in my own lawn, I got a little overzealous with putting my seed down when I did my yard a couple years ago. The problem is the grass will look great when it first comes in, but then when it starts to mature, it's going to crowd. You're not going to get good airflow, and you most likely, like I had happen to me, are going to develop a fungus problem. So with this grass seed, more is not necessarily better. It's going to look sparse when it first comes in. You want that because it will, as it matures, each single little shoot of grass that comes from the seed will mature into 30 to 40 individual grass blades per plant. So that one thing is going to bloom out into cover a much larger area. And once it does that, like I said, you don't want it crowded, because then you don't get good airflow and then you get fungus. All right, I'm going to do the second verticut and seed, and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so we've done our second pass with the verticutter and spread the second half of the seed so that we've got an average of 10,000 pounds per square foot covering this area. Now, one thing I want to point out, I'm not sure if this will come through in the video so well, but I'll see here. So you can see we've got these lines going down this way from when I cut, but we've got a section here that the lines aren't really appearing. That's because, again, we're only cutting about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep. So if there's any kind of uneven area in the lawn, depressions or what have you, like we had right here, there's kind of a little trench right here. Those blades are, as they're moving the machine across it, they're not touching the ground there. So this, inevitably, when you do a seeding, there's going to be some little spots here and there where the verticut machine just didn't reach it. The seed will germinate a little bit here, but not as well as it's going to germinate in these areas that we really got verticut real well. So this is the kind of situation. Don't worry about this. Generally, unless there's whole large areas where the verticut didn't really do a good job, if it's just little spots here and there, that grass that's germinating around that spot will fill into that spot. So the last thing I want to mention here, and stick with me, this is an important part. I want to show you the label on the grass seed that we're using here. So as you can see, and this is basically a certification that they run it through a lab. They certify all these numbers here, and then that's their certification ticket. Sorry, I'm not showing this with the camera. But as you can see here, there's 3 different types of fescue in this blend, of different percentages. Let me get this other label out of the way. So we've got a 38% one type of fescue, 33% another type, and 26% of a third type. What this does, and by the way, there's the germination rates here. So lab confirmed that these seeds, 90% of these seeds will germinate under the proper conditions. And then again, one thing you want to look for at the bottom, I know I'm jumping around on my topics here, other crop seeds, and then weed seeds, 0% lab certified, 0% weed seed, 0% other types of weed seed, and then there's 1.5% inert matter. That's just seed husks and parts of the seed plant from harvesting the seed, but that's not going to affect you're not going to get weeds or anything. That's just dead plant matter that got a little bit mixed in. So use a good quality seed. Use a blend like this, because if you put one type of seed in your lawn and then you get a fungus that really likes that variety of grass, it'll wipe out the whole lawn. A lot of times different blights and funguses that can affect your grass, they'll generally target one type of seed, or one type of grass rather. So you might lose some of your lawn to this one variety, to a fungus or something, but these other 2 are going to not be susceptible. So your lawn will still recover from that blight or fungus that it got. So anyway, okay, next thing I'm going to do here is this. I haven't mentioned anything with this right side yet. That's because we've got another service that's more intended for generally healthy lawns, where we aerate and we put about 4 pounds of seed down per 1,000, and this just helps keep lawns that are generally healthy rejuvenated and get some fresh grass growing in there so that it stays healthy. So now what I'm going to do, with that service, we only aerate. With the full service overseeding, we double cut it with the verticutter, and then we aerate. So I'm going to aerate this whole section, and then I'll seed just this side as well. And then when this starts to come in, we'll see the difference between the full service overseeding and how it really fills in. And then over here, you'll notice it'll just kind of fill in plugs where we did the aerating, which is great because in a lawn that's generally healthy, you don't want to really overcrowd it again with too much seed. You just want to interject a little bit of fresh grass all around the area. So we'll get to that. We'll see how that looks. Okay guys, so we're done. I'm going to explain what we've done to each side here. You'll notice I've got a line kind of marking one side from the other because these are examples of our two different services. So on this side, we've done the full service overseeding, which is doing 2 passes with the verticutter in perpendicular to one another, with spreading seed in between each pass. And then we've also aerated it, so you can see how there's plugs. The aeration helps to loosen the soil, especially the clay soils in our area. The ground gets compacted, and then you don't get oxygen and nutrients down to the roots. So this helps to loosen the soil. And then finally, we've spread our starter fertilizer, which is it's got a good bit of nitrogen. You see the numbers right here, 1424. So this is your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and potassium. The phosphorus is the part that really helps to stimulate root growth. So you can see that's with why it's got the 20 there. It's a higher number, higher ratio than the other numbers. And then the nitrogen's kind of high in this one too, because that actually promotes the top growth, once the part that we see, the green blades, and it'll help them get a deeper green color. So now on this side, this is just our aerate and seed service. So we haven't taken the verticutter like over this area like we did on the left hand side here. This has just been aerated. Again, you can see the little plugs, holes in the ground, and then we spread seed, and this does get the starter fertilizer as well. All right, so now I'll set up our sprinklers. I'll get this watered, and we'll check back in after 7 days and see what it looks like. And we'll follow along each week with the progress as it grows in, and just see how the two different sides compare for the two different services. So that's it. Hope you're enjoying this so far. Thanks. Okay guys, so we're done with the seeding. I've got the irrigation set up. So now this is the most important part. It doesn't matter what type of sprinkler system you use. Right here I don't have an irrigation system, so I went to Lowe's and bought a $50 timer that's got multiple zones. I'll give you a little shot of that right here. So if you don't have an irrigation system and you're trying to seed your lawn, you're going to want to get some sort of timer like this, because essentially once you've seeded, you want this area to stay damp, not completely saturated and not dry to the touch either, but it needs to stay damp for the first 2 to 3 weeks until the grass is about 1 inch to 1.5 inches tall. You want to make sure that this soil is never dry to the touch. If your grass seed germinates and sprouts and then you forget to water it for a couple of days and it dries out, that stuff's going to die. Our motto when it comes to seeding is if it dries out, it dies out. So this is the most critical thing to get right when you've overseeded your yard, is to make sure you've got the watering down. What I've got this set up for is about 10 minutes, 3 times a day. And again, we're not trying to soak it to where it's just drenched, because if the water is sitting, if there's seed sitting in standing water, it'll rot and it won't sprout. At the same time, like I said, if it dries out, then it's not going to germinate. So if you've watered in the morning and you come and check it right before the next cycle is set to run again and it's dry, then you need to increase your watering times. You want to make sure that when the next cycle comes on, that surface is still damp to the touch. So I know I'm kind of going on and on about this, but I can't stress enough how important this part is in the process. To get a successful overseeding job done, you really need to make sure it's watered thoroughly every day. So, all right, I'm going to check back in a week. We'll see if anything sprouted a week from now, and that'll be the next step in the series here. Thanks.